Welcome to the Visualcast, coming at you from Israel. I'm your host, Alon Hammer, aka Rem.
The Visualcast is a hybrid podcast where we sit down with some of the best, most interesting, and most exciting visual artists from all over the world. We chat about life, art, visuals, software, hardware, systems, crystals, alien downloads, spirituality, and catalysts. It's essentially a massive nerd out. But the guests also do a set where we dive into their computer and get an up-and-close look at how they make art, how they perform art, or really anything they want to share with us.
Sorry for missing the past 2 weeks. I underestimated the amount of time and effort it takes to travel with a baby, and we were on the road more than I had previously thought. But I really want to keep up the consistency and feel good about releasing episodes weekly, so I hope to rectify the missed weeks in the coming future. For episode 24, we are back with a bang, and for our guest this week, we have the stunning and powerful Jack Hurley, aka AntiAlias. Jack is a well-known and high-level visual artist, playing for the likes of Tipper and visual directing the Pretty Lights tour. He is really killing it, and also develops a tool called AAVJ. For those who don't know, AAVJ is an extremely powerful and versatile application built in TouchDesigner for VJing and visual performance. In our convo, we get into Jack's origins in fine arts and his early musical endeavors, having huge support to pursue arts from the people around him, getting integrated into the Tipper family and quitting his job to be a full-time artist, getting into 3D design, falling, as we all do, in love with TouchDesigner and the sometimes high learning curve of the best software ever made, learning TD from tutorials and the many online mentors, why he decided to make AAVJ and release it for free, working on one of the coolest audiovisual tours around with Pretty Lights, educating people on NFTs and blockchain technology and the misunderstandings around it, being inspired and collaborating with other artists and how empowering it can be. For Jack's set, we take a super deep look at AAVJ and the new features coming soon. Mr. AA also shows us a few of his signature looks and some insanely useful tidbits and workflows and how they are made. This convo with Jack was super powerful and informative. Jack has such great vibes and is so sharing and open with his life and his techniques. We thank him so much for being on. Now without any further ado, here's the Visualcast.
The world is like a ride at an amusement park, and it's fun for a while. Some people have been on the ride for a long time, and they begin to question, is this real, or is this just a ride? And other people have remembered, and they come back to us, and they say, hey, don't worry, don't be afraid, ever, because this is just a ride.
Favorites. AntiAlias, Jack Hurley, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me on.
Hell yeah. Yeah, it really is an honor to have you here, and I do mean it that you are one of the most requested guests, on multiple different avenues. People always ask me about when's Jack on, so
well, it's great to hear. Thank you again. Yeah, this is great. I'm really glad that we were able to get things going.
Yeah. Okay, so I like to start things off with like a little bit of a scripted question, and then we'll get into like a little bit more of a conversation. So, Mr. AA, you are without a doubt, like I said, the most requested guest, and I'm super honored and excited to have you here today. You're an out-of-this-world talent creating interactive, immersive, and reactive art at the highest levels possible. You've created poster art for some of our favorite events, performed live with some of the biggest artists around, are one of the lead designers and visual artists for the mind-blowing Pretty Lights tour, and you are the developer of the outstanding AAVJ software that has elevated so many of our shows and tightened the gap for real-time and generative VJing. So, massive thank you for that. So to start things off, what is it like touring, performing, creating, and developing at this super high level, and what excites you about the future?
That's a great question. It's exciting. It's challenging. It's in a multitude of ways. On both in a technical sense and in the time management sense, the travel sense, and but overall it's just like it's so fulfilling, even despite how difficult it can be sometimes. It's like it's really great. I can't imagine doing anything else. Like I just love what I do, and to be able to help build tools and allow other people to create experiences and have their own experiences, and it's a very fulfilling thing that I find myself doing, and I'm excited for the future. I'm excited for improvements on the tools that I build, and excited to see how people use them and advance them, and it's really exciting to me to see everybody using tools and coming out to the shows and just being a part of this like really awesome thing that I'm blessed to be a part of, for sure.
Hell yeah, that's really awesome and exciting. I mean, you really are at like a very cutting edge moment in technology and live events. The pretty light stuff, we're definitely going to get into it. It's quite impressive, to say the least, and it just shows kind of like what's possible with the right people and the right technology and the right focus. It's a stepping stone. It's a stepping stone. It's not the first show of its kind. It's not the be all end all, but it is a very high level thing that is kind of like making the rounds in a way that people are talking about it. It's a really good reference for other people to like be like, hey, did you see that thing? I can do that. Can you want to do that? You know what I mean? Like, it's such a good, it elevates the whole industry in a very high level. I hope you're aware of that. I really hope that I'll be able to catch it in person one day soon, because all the videos are just like, oh fuck, I want to be there and see that thing. Like, what's going on here? So
yeah,
it's really
gotta
awesome.
have you out there.
One day. All right, Jack. So let's go a little bit early. So you grew up in Virginia, or is that where your family's from? Like, you're originally from?
Yeah, I'm from like Northern Virginia, like kind of outside DC, about 30 minutes. Grew up there most of my life. I lived there until I went to school down closer to Virginia Beach at CNU, and studied fine arts down there.
Fine arts?
Yeah, I did fine arts. So I kind of did a lot of different stuff, printmaking and film photography. And then, cool. I minored in art history too. So a lot of
nice.
Just always found that really interesting, and
nice.
Just kind of got a rounded perspective on a lot of different forms of art, and then lived in Richmond, Virginia for a few years, where I kind of started out VJing and doing live events, and then eventually, come to the last few years, I moved out to Denver about 2.5 years ago, and been here ever since, and it's been great, and enjoying being out here.
Hell yeah. So you went to school for fine arts, and like, did you get did you have interface with like digital media and like software and stuff like that, or was it more like academic focused?
Yeah, I was a graphic designer for many years. That's kind of how I got my start in both being involved in live events and just kind of how I made a living for some time. I had been, using Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop, and kind of focused primarily on that in school. The VJing and the 3D animation and stuff was something that I didn't discover until kind of like later on, just in my free time. And I was kind of, being a graphic designer and curious about making animations, both 2D and 3D, towards the end of my stint there. And I had, started going to a ton of music events, and really just, became very important to my life. And I really, just thinking about ways that I could be a part of the musical experience. I, produced a good bit of music for a while. That was kind of like my first foray into software. Nice. And just kind of,
electronic?
Live improv. It was like electronic, largely, inspired by Pretty Lights and other,
Cool.
artists that were at the time, the last 10 years.
Yeah.
So Chromatic and so
Hell yeah.
yeah, and then the fine art side of things, the like curiosity for animation and stuff, it kind of seemed to be a way where I could be part of that musical experience and actually work with an instrument and be expressive, while also kind of being able to showcase the animations that I was making in my free time, and it just kind of clicked into something where it's grown.
So cool.
Yeah, like right now.
That's awesome. And when you were young, like, did you have, like, you went to a fine arts school? Was that kind of something that you always wanted to study? Were you inspired by anybody around you to, like, become an artist? Or was becoming an artist not really, like, in your mind space? You just wanted to kind of, like, engross yourself in this world? Or, what kind of was the, I like the word catalyst a lot. I use that a lot on the show. But what was the catalyst for you to want to go into fine arts and, and eventually become an artist?
Yeah, so both my parents are very creative. My mom just generally all around really amazing, just creator and painter and just inspiration in a lot of ways. And cool. My dad as well, just like an excellent photographer, and just that being such a part of my childhood. I just feel like just having such great parents, it just enabled me. They supported me in whatever I wanted to do, and like being able to choose to be an artist is kind of a bizarre thing, to think of making a living doing. And I think in high school, I had been creative in elementary school and stuff like that. But in high school, I took an art class, and my teacher, Mr. Gravella, he was a big inspiration for me. And
shout out Mr. Gravella.
Shouts out Mr. Cravella. He's the man. Need to catch up with him soon. But yeah, it just it clicked that it was possible to be an artist and to make a living doing that. And going into college, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I didn't want to do finance or business or whatever. And fine arts seemed really awesome. Something that I really enjoyed. I've found myself to excel at, and so I decided to do it, and it was one of the best decisions I've ever made, for sure.
Yeah, hell yeah. Thank you so much, Mr. Cravella, for inspiring Jack.
Shouts out.
That's so cool. I mean, like, it's very, it's not, it's rare in a way, because you had that support from your parents, like, and it's not like support of like, do whatever you want. It's like support of like, we're doing this, maybe you could do it too. You know what I mean? Like, it's a very nice trajectory, and kind of like it seems like from a young age or from early on, you kind of had this idea in your mind, whereas a lot of us kind of like aren't sure about it, or like maybe fine arts or learning art in college is like an easy way out, or something like that. So I really like that. Personally, I also from a very young age wanted to do this. I didn't know what it was that I wanted to do, but I knew that I wanted to do something different and creative, and not like you said, finance or lawyer, stuff like that. So it's great. I think it's empowering. I think for young people to be reminded that there is no correct path or thing to do. Like, you can do whatever you want. And, maybe, hopefully you're being supported now by it, but even if you're not, then you could still do anything.
Sure.
Yeah.
And, it's crazy the ways that you'll be inspired. I think the first time I ever had any exposure to 3D art or like anything was like, being 12 years old and playing Call of Duty, like the first one on the PC, and like plotted maps and stuff.
Oh, cool.
Curious,
cool.
like about just like how do you even do that? Just to create a
what's
space.
What's going on here?
Yeah.
That's
so
cool. I love
like
that.
kind of had a little bit of exposure early on, but didn't really revisit the 3D stuff until like many years later, and kind of realized like how much a part of my journey it had been.
That's awesome. I love that. I guess kids today, they have like Minecraft, like where like the game is actually like that,
The
like
building,
creative
yeah,
thing
it's
building,
awesome.
and we're
Okay.
like, oh yeah, Call of Duty, we shoot people, but also you can make cool maps. Just like,
Mhm.
such a funny difference in like the culture.
Right.
Cool. So that's really awesome and inspiring. Like, so how did you get to Denver? Like, what kind of pushed you there? I know that there's a really nice art scene there. You know, kind of tell us about that a little bit. Yeah, what's it like living in Denver?
Sure. Yeah. I was, like I said, I grew up in Virginia. I'd been living there most of my life, all of my life at that point. And I was working at Capital One as a graphic designer for a while. Actually, I, took the corporate route for a little bit, which, was one of the best decisions that I made for myself as an independent artist was to, find a job and have that on the side and, kind of work two jobs. One was the stuff that I love to do and the other one was what paid the bills. And,
Yeah.
it was a great job too. But, I started to feel like I wanted to branch out. I wanted to try something new, live in a new place. I started getting some opportunities here and there, with, notably, back in the day doing a dome planetarium show with Datagrama and Joao and Theron and David and just, and then eventually
The
kind of
boys.
getting connected. Yeah, the boys. Getting connected with, Dave and kind of getting tossed into doing visuals for Tipper at Red Rocks, like insane. But yeah, it just kind of became more realistic, just given some of the opportunities that were arising to quit my job and to kind of figure it out. And, I was just driven to try that out. The Capital One was great. And I'm glad that I did that. But yeah, it just kind of started manifesting and the ball started rolling. And, I've always tried to connect with people and just, over the years, music events and pretty lights and festivals and things like that, it just, Denver, a lot of people kind of flock to Denver because of how much it has to offer both, and the nature and just the community and the music. I mean, top tier acts all the time, like year round coming through and it just made a lot of sense. It was far enough away where I could feel like I was making a leap. And it does feel that way when I look at the map. But yeah, it's been great, and I've been figuring it out and making a lot of friends and reuniting with a lot of friends from years past, and it's just it's grown on me a lot.
Nice. A lot of stuff there to talk about. I definitely want to talk a lot about the Tipper and stuff and, kind of your foray into that realm. But yeah, I mean, it's super cool. Like, was it important to you to kind of make that leap? Like, did you feel like, oh, I want to kind of get out of my home and like where I'm from to like did it feel like important for you as an artist to like leave your home and start something different?
It not in a sense where I wanted to leave because I didn't love Virginia or didn't,
Right.
love my family or friends or anything.
Yeah.
It was more just something that I wanted to do for myself to, I was
Spread your
getting
wings
older and-
almost, kind of.
yeah, like try this. I mean, the world is such a huge place. I
Yeah.
love traveling and, I had been here. I think the first time I came to Colorado was for Pretty Lights in 2015. And, it was just really
Nice.
cool. I never thought that I would, move here, honestly, but just, that period in my life, it just worked out with, the people I surrounded myself with and my interests and, where, what opportunities were arising, and it just kind of made sense. And Denver seemed like a cool place. I didn't really have I thought about Vegas or Austin or, all cool cities, but, yeah, Denver ended up being the one, and it's been good so far.
Awesome. It's awesome. And you were saying before about the, working for Capital One and kind of how important that was to have like a job so that you can moonlight, as an artist after. I feel like that's very important, for people. And it's never like a 1+2 or 1+1 thing. You know, it's always like opportunity, location. There's a lot of things involved about getting a job, right? And it's like, you said you were like working as graphic designer there for Capital One. So you kind of like, you got to kind of still immerse yourself in your creativity and be in your, you know, in your element, which is really nice as well, because it's not like soul crushing. Even though it's corporate and whatever, at least you're sitting in front of Illustrator all day, so it's not that bad. So I feel like that's super important because it does give you the breathing space. You know, being a starving artist is one of those things that like I always remember, like nobody like said to me like, oh, don't be an artist because you're gonna be a starving artist, but like that idea was so prevalent in the culture and in society of like, if you're gonna be an artist, it's gonna be hard, you know? And like honestly, like throughout my life, I never really found it hard. And you know, I have, thank God, like my parents always supported me, and you know, they're not rich, but like they could support me, you know? So it's like I never had a moment where I was like starving per se. But very fast, I mean, I found myself finding work within the kind of realm, and then very fast that work kind of permeated and became work that I like to do, and then, you know, everything kind of just became that thing. So I feel like that idea of being a starving artist is first of all not true to life, and also very easy to kind of, like you said, find. There's so many corporate jobs out there. There's so much work out there that might not be your dream job, but it will be something that can support you while you work towards your dream job per se, you know? And I feel like that's important because I feel like sometimes people are hesitant, or maybe they feel like, you know, that if they take that job, they're going to be vilified. They're not an artist. They're not following their thing. But really, like, whatever you can do to elevate your hobby slash, you know, dream, then there's nothing wrong with that, you know?
Totally. Yeah. And you know, it's a nuanced thing too, you know. It's like there are certain industries of being an artist that, you know, whether you're a painter or a graphic designer, you know, like ceramicist or what have you, like, you know, I found myself in graphic design and seeing as design as a part of every aspect of our lives all the time, especially these days. I mean, you know, constantly just like design everywhere, you know, and like it made a lot of sense. It was like, you know, it seemed like a viable option for making a living, and you know, it's and just the art, it just came natural. It was just stuff that I love to do. I didn't because I felt like I had to, or I felt like I needed to make a living. It was just, I mean, I did obviously, but like I just loved to do it, and it was something that I really enjoyed. So, yeah, you know, it's like I think that if there's a niche that you can find where you can express yourself and to, you know, make a living doing it and allow yourself to, you know, I think one of the biggest lessons that I learned, having the 9-to-5 thing is like the ability to say no to things that I didn't want to do. And I think that a lot of people
really
starting out, I think a lot of people starting out think that they need to say yes to everything. And, you know, at first you kind of want to, because it's like, you know, a cool opportunity. Yeah. It's exciting. You're, you know, learning and it's fun and stuff. You know, but it's also like so important, like equally as important, if not more so, than to say no, you know, because it's, you've only got so many hours in the day and in your life. And, you know, it's when you say yes to something, you often have to say no to something else. So like, you really have to like think about your time, and being selective about things. And that's like the power that like, having your bills paid from the job that you do, it allows you, especially as a up and coming artist, where you may not be getting paid a ton starting out. There might not be any budget at all. You know, I like started out doing shows for a couple of drink tickets and like $50, you know, like if that. And
$50, damn, dude.
Yeah, I know, right? It's pretty. But you know, at the time, like that's what I wanted to do. It was just
that's usually cool. You know, usually there's nothing. You know, it's a few drink tickets, maybe.
Exactly. And, you know, and that was great. And it was such a part of my, you know, development, and it makes you appreciate the time that you do put in. You know, it's like you put in a month worth of hours to do one show, it's like, you should strive to make that worth it for your time, for your energy, for your life. Like it's something that you love to do, and it's like it can be difficult to separate those things, to kind of be a little bit logical at times, with something that you love to do and you want to do it all the time. But being selective is also pretty important too.
Definitely. Like you said, there's only so many hours you can do things. That's super potent. Cool. So yeah, so now we're kind of like, getting into more of like AntiAlias project, and, like when I think of your project, I think of like immersion and like interactivity. I'm not familiar with your earliest work. I just think of, your, the AntiAlias project is like a real-time generative VJing project / all the stuff you do for pretty lights and stuff like that. So, you said that you kind of got the opportunity to work with Joao and Datagrama, but what kind of like got you to that level? What got you, like, what was your immersion in immersive art? Kind of like, what was the catalyst, as it were, to get you into generative art? There's so many different ways to be introduced to generative art and to interactive art, but it's specific. You didn't, I don't think you were VJing with loops, or, maybe you were, like, just to kind of get your hands dirty, but like that's not what AntiAlias is known for, or, has the aesthetic of. So yeah, please tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, when I was starting, it was, I discovered Beeple sometime, like 2014 or something like that, and I just loved his work. I thought it was so sick. Before, his work now is also great, but
Yeah.
It was kind of his more like sci-fi, super technical stuff. And I just like found that like so fascinating, and just like thinking about like how he did that or would make these pieces. I kind of was introduced to Cinema 4D, and, I had been, in middle school and like high school, I had discovered Google SketchUp and kind of had messed with some modeling and stuff there. And, but more and more as like the music events became more a part of my life, I became more interested in making animations. And so I started animating a lot in Cinema 4D, just making simple stuff, some loops, just trying to, figure out what was good with the whole, with that whole, not even industry, because at the time I wasn't thinking about that, just the whole medium of art. And that was great, but I was just so impatient, and like, I just, I didn't want to wait for my animations to render, I just wanted to be able to mess with them, like, and so I had, was introduced actually to TouchDesigner, 1 year at Nightmare Festival. I think it was at this place called Ramblewood in Maryland. And Jacob New, who's also a really amazing VJ and just all around technical wizard of all things. Shouts out Jacob for that. TouchDesigner became such a huge part of my life. It was just it was amazing that like you could animate a cube in a circle and like have it on a MIDI controller. It was just like the coolest thing, having waited, like sometimes hours for animations to render. And so just I've always became really fascinated with the real-time aspect of it, because it was difficult, and it was like different, and it was like so dynamic and kind of expressive, and so it became kind of a no-brainer. And it almost shaped the styles that I was using, because you can only get away with so much at a time. So not only it shaped the style, it also taught me a lot about how to use the resources of my computer in the most effective way possible to try to get the most out of this like real-time media that I wanted to create. And it just it's having really incredible rendered clips is like amazing too. I mean, so many colleagues that just make incredible stuff, and it's just a different like workflow, I guess. And it's cool to see those things kind of coming together these days with just it's great, like mixture of real time and rendered, and but yeah, it just became, that's what I felt like was drawing me to keep creating animations and 3D art. It was just the challenge of understanding how to use my computer in that way. And so and I think that like led also to some of my relationships with different VJs or artists that I got to talking with, Princess Joao, or a number of other peeps in the kind of tipper camp and everything. And so I had been doing shows in Richmond. I played at some pretty small but like legendary venues, like Strange Matter, which is it's like the first stage in Guitar Hero, like real crusty and
That's
dusty,
really
but like awesome, at the same time. And
is it really based
Canal
around
Club.
that spot?
No, it's
Okay, but it's like the same vibe of just like people throwing
same
drinks
vibe
at you and shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Only a few times, but yeah. Yeah. So I just kind of, I was doing shows in Richmond and just kind of working my way up and making connections. And, we had this really cool dome theater at the Science Museum in Richmond. And, one of the promoters in RVA, organized these really awesome shows there. And like, it just, they booked Datagrama and Alias and Tilla. And, it was crazy. It was like the biggest screen I'd ever even thought about performing on. It was like a massive dome,
So was that like you had been working with the venue and then they booked this show and connected you guys? Or was it kind of like, or did you find them, or did Drow and you find each other in different ways? What was like the...
Yes. So I was friends with the promoters that were putting on the show, and, we had this opportunity to do something really cool in that dome. And, obviously that Datagrama, the team is just amazing, and it was the perfect fit for something like that. And, being, one of the few people that was doing shows at the time in Richmond, I was selected to be kind of opener for that show. Like, and local. That's kind of where we... Yep. Yeah. That's where we kind of connected and became friends, and
super cool.
Yeah, did those shows, and they turned out really dope.
You blew them away, and the rest is history. I love it.
The rest is history.
I love it. Yeah. I mean, it's like, I relate to so much that you're saying about the impatience of waiting for renders and kind of like, I don't know, this for me, like the more and more I immerse myself in real-time graphics and generative art, the more I realize that like art is almost a byproduct of the thing that I like to do, which is like build systems and develop tools. And like the more that I do that, then the more that my art becomes more interesting and fun and like expressive. But like I'm scratching more of an itch that like I realize that is, the itch is not to be an artist, the itch is to like solve problems in a creative fashion. You know what I mean?
Right.
Is there something similar there to you as well? Like, did you ever think that you would ever develop tools? Like, it's such a like, we know that they're tied in together, right? Like, developing a TouchDesigner is coding, right? But like when you think about like when I was a kid thinking I want to be an artist, I never thought to myself that I'm going to be like fucking writing Python scripts and and doing all this stuff.
Yeah, no, I mean, I didn't ever do any computer science classes in school. I never imagined myself, maybe a little HTML on MySpace, like when I was 10 years old or whatever. But like I never coded anything. I never I didn't know anything about building computers really at all. And but yes, it has been something that has grown on me a ton, where I do feel a lot of the time where it's like, I love being an artist, I love creating, but like a large part of my art is creating systems and creating tools, and I didn't think that would, I didn't ever even imagine making software, as for fun or for, as a whatever. But like you said, I mean, some like developing in TouchDesigner is programming. It's like, even if you're not typing code, it's like you're still arranging operations of, processes and that kind of make things go. And I feel like I found my brain being good at, like, if I were to understand how something worked, like I could kind of like back engineer it or kind of develop on it. And I feel like that kind of stemmed also from, learning how to play the guitar. Got my guitar on the wall here, but my mom bought me this electric guitar. This like, little yard sale guitar when I was like 13 years old. But at the time, I just saw it and it was tunnel vision, just like the coolest shit I'd ever seen in my life, and I feel like just teaching myself the guitar and just like learning, just understanding the instrument, it just like, it just kind of like wired over the years, like my brain to like be attuned or like to enjoy like figuring out, challenges, or it's like a puzzle, it's like, it's not just, creating an animation. It's like kind of like figuring out, how to make things move and how to control them, and becomes a part of the whole experience.
Super cool. Yeah. I feel like we're very lucky. We're at a point in time where the tools are accessible. The technology is at a level that you can actually do these things. It's not like a science fiction. And there's so much resources, right? There's so many people before us that have done the stuff or figured the things out, and shared it. It's such and this is apropos to the software that you develop, AAVJ, which I want to talk about in a moment as well. But the idea of so many things out there for free that are accessible with information attached, so you can learn by reverse engineering. You can learn on YouTube. You don't have to go to school to learn how to be a VJ, let alone be a developer. I feel like we're very, we kind of got into it when it was just starting that. Not VJing. VJing was going on, but like the idea of this kind of community and like the information being available everywhere was just starting. And now it's like, and this is not like a slam on anybody, but there's like every day a new Patreon opens up. That's not a bad thing. That's awesome. That's like amazing. Regardless of it costing money, like that's like a $5 transaction of getting infinite information from super high level people is nothing. It's like not even, the money is not even a thing. And most of these resources have free tiers, it's really just like as like a pat on the back, which most of these people, if not all of them, deserve, at least a pat on the back, if not more. So I feel like that's super cool, and it's encouraging, it's encouraging. Like when we got into it, we're very much around the same time, like, mid 2010s, maybe a little bit earlier for me, but like around the same time, there was like the encouragement was kind of like, very localized, like I had a mentor, he encouraged me, but like now it's like the encouragement is so vast, like kind of what I was saying before about the Pretty Light show of like, hey, this thing is happening. It's successful. It's going on. It's high level. I can look at it and reference it and be like, hey, I want to do that. Where it's like so much of that is prevalent now. I think it's really, it's great. I'm really excited to see the next generation of VJs. And, to be honest, I mean, I'm sometimes really jealous because like you have all these like freaking 20-year-olds that are like making like the craziest renders, and you're just like, well, if they're doing it now when they're 20, like what's going to be when they're my like what are they going to be doing? It's like insane. I'm not like vindictively jealous. It's jealous like in a playful way, but it's like I'm excited for them because it's like it's really cool to see people getting into it at such a young age, at such a high level. Like, what's it going to mean for the industry in a whole? Like, it is a really cool time to be in this industry. And people are like worried about AI art and all that kind of stuff. And to me, it's like, that's nothing. That's like not even it's a footnote, I think, in the history of this whole industry. And it's, it's a fad, and nothing against it, no shade at it. I think it's a great tool if you want to use it, but it's not like the end of anything. It's the beginning of other things.
I think it definitely, it's a change, in a lot of things. And like, I think it has a lot of potential. But yeah, it's, the evolution of any sort of technology that's, kind of mind blowing in that way, I think I think criticism can be good too. And it can keep people thinking about the right things when it does come to, when it comes to, ethics or, just the advancement of that technology in general.
Totally.
But yeah.
Yeah, I feel like AI is just like the flavor of the week, like I had Lyle Hintz .simulate on a couple of weeks ago. His episode's going to be out soon, but and he's like immersed in it very heavily, and it's just like it's a lot of like it's the same thing, I'm sure, when photography became digital, or when the personal computer came out and anybody can be a graphic designer. You don't need a $20,000 Corel Draw machine or whatever, or like, Premiere came out and you didn't need a friggin', watch out or whatever, like the way that technology progresses and becomes more and more available to people, it's not a killer, it's an expansion. You know what I mean? Like, I think that especially today, like the way that the media cycle works and the way that like information is passed on, it's super reactionary and very, what's the word? Like, when you want to get excited or
sensational.
It's sensational,
or
super
sensationalized.
Sensationalized. Yeah, exactly. So I feel like, the whole AI thing is, I feel like it's that. And especially like when you think about what these companies are worth, they're worth billions of dollars. There's no way that they're going to, put the brakes on their marketing or anything. They're going to go full power with that. And yeah, I think that really the conversation, like you said, is around ethics and like safety. It shouldn't be about like, what is art? Are you an artist if you do this? Like that doesn't mean anything. It's much more important to me about like, is it stealing? Is it okay? Where is the line between scraping the internet for information versus, having privacy? Is it safe? Are we creating, I don't think it's anywhere close to sentient. I don't think it's anything like that. I think it's more of like you can argue, but like, I think it's more of like a Google search, like a really good Google search.
Supercharged.
Yeah, because it's not, and this is, we had with Lyle, we got really deep into it, but it's like, it's not creating anything new yet. It's still taking from things that exist. And once it passes that threshold, then it will be a different conversation, but it doesn't seem like it's close there yet. It's still having to, get its stuff from something. So
it's really interesting.
No, please.
I was just gonna say, it's really interesting because I think a lot of people, they criticize AI art, especially because they think that it is derivative of everything, which is not incorrect, but it's kind of how our brains work. We ingest and absorb influence from everything every day. Design, walking down the street, or artists, both artists that you love or your friends are, 100%. Or like everyone, and like, not to make it like, oh, we're all friends, so yeah, give me all your art and I'll just, take it all and make something, derivative from it. It's not necessarily what I'm advocating, but I think it's like, I think it's a little bit more nuanced than people maybe like kind of initially want to get into it. And yeah, I don't know that it's destroying. I think a lot of people are, especially, people like painters or any sort of other physical type artists, thinking that their job is going to go away or the value of their paintings is going to go away. And, there's some genuine concern around, around how it does affect the market. But I think that like, it really does some amazing things, like, and has the potential for amazing things, being able to train models on your own art, train models to, assist you in your design process. I think there's a lot of huge amount of potential in that technology.
The level of, like, expansion that I've gotten from ChatGPT of like coding, like it's unbelievable how much I can, like, I do have an understanding of how code works, especially from TouchDesigner and like node-based systems, but my level of like actual scripting is very low. In the past year, maybe 2 years, I'm like at a level where I'm like an intermediate developer and scripter just because of the way that ChatGPT spits out scripts, like the way that it gives you, like, first of all, the way that you have to ask very specific things to get good results. So now my brain is like, okay, what do I need? What am I looking for? And the way that it spits out results of like, everything's commented, and you can kind of like read the script in a way of like learning, like you were saying, like reverse engineering. Like the way that I looked at scripts 2 years ago and the way that I look at them now is so different. And that's amazing. That's like, there's nothing negative about that. That's totally great. One thing that, I don't know how we got into AI, but one thing that I wanted to definitely talk about is you mentioned derivativeness. You studied fine art, and like I also, I went to film school and studied art history as well. Nothing is new. Everything is a derivative of something. Any great artist will tell you that. It's not about copying or emulating. It's about inspiration, especially in movies, especially in like modern art. It's all kind of like everything's been done, and that's not to say like you can't do anything. It's to say that what can you bring to the table? You know what I mean? Not like invent the new wheel, like, but how can I make the wheel different or more interesting or, function better or whatever, enter anything here. So I feel like people forget that, and that's an important thing to think about, especially with this kind of AI fad.
Yeah, totally. And like, it's tough for me too, because it's like, one of my biggest influences in being a digital artist, especially in the beginning, was Android Jones, who, obviously we're all familiar with the incredible work that he does. And, so much of my early artwork was scrubbing the internet for photos, or not photos per se, but images, and cutting them up and making art with it, and that's just kind of exactly, like I said, in like a supercharged way, that's what that is, so it's like, I don't know. I'm not really in a position to be like, that's wrong or whatever, because at that time, that was how I expressed myself,
Totally.
Like it's like similar to, if you get an app on your iPad and it's so simple and it's just, it's like Silk or whatever, where you just draw it and makes a cool fractal mandala, it's like, yeah, sure. That's easy. Anybody can do that. But like, if it allows you to express yourself where you become more curious about other technologies and softwares and things like that, like
There's
it can
nothing
be
wrong with it.
I mean, it can be a part of your journey. And I think that like, there are, valid questions on how, models are created and used and whatever. And, I think that there's a valid conversation there, and at the same time, I think that like the ball is just constantly moving, and like many early technologies, like it's going to be kind of shitty at the beginning. And like, in order to even fathom to make this thing happen, at the beginning of all of it was just like, the only way that that's possible is to just get everything that we can, all the data that we can, or, and use it. And I, also growing up in a period where we went from, no internet to everything internet. Like, it was always the understanding of like, whatever you put on the internet is on the internet forever.
Yeah, for sure.
And like, that's not to say that like, that's not to say that like, oh, you put it there so I own it or anyone can own it.
Right.
That's not fair either. But, it ties back to, like I said, just like how artists, how we perceive things. We watch tutorials, we see other people's art, it's like these things derive and change. And I think that there's room on both sides to be able to talk about it or critique or be excited about it, but can I say whether it's good or bad? No, obviously. Like, can anybody?
Well,
it's hard to say,
It's hard to say,
we're watching it unfold, and so
we'll see what happens for sure. I mean, maybe it is sentient and it's fucking with us. Who knows?
Maybe, yeah.
Probably not, but maybe.
Probably they're listening right now. So.
They're listening right now. Yeah. Well, we're in a simulation anyway, so I mean, we're all AI.
Exactly.
Okay, let's get AI out of here. Get out of here, AI. TouchDesigner, you were introduced to it by Jacob New. You said, is that Noop? I think is his artist name, Noop. Yeah, shout out Noop.
Shouts out Noop.
Thank you very much for showing Jack TouchDesigner. I mean, let's talk about TouchDesigner. It's a much better artificial intelligence to talk about.
Let's do it.
The ethos of TouchDesigner, kind of like what made you fall in love with it. What was the, where did it click for you? Because it is a very difficult thing, especially if you don't come from programming, especially if you don't come from node-based, especially if you don't come from like generative real-time graphics, and you're more of a 3D artist or After Effects artist. It's a very difficult thing to work your mind around, but I always tell people, like, if you're going to get into real-time art, if you're going to get into generative, start with TouchDesigner. It might not be your end program. It might not be even something that you like, but it's going to shape your brain in a way for any future endeavor that you have with node-based systems. You're going to have this really good base understanding of the concepts of proceduralism and generative art. So yeah, I mean, like, please just give us your TouchDesigner spiel, and we'll go into AAVJ from there.
Sure. So, TouchDesigner is a very unique software. It's kind of tough to explain to people what it really does. I think most people, know it as something that makes visuals. But to say that TouchDesigner is a software that makes visuals would be a huge, not disservice, but understatement of like what it is, and it's complex. It takes time to even just wrap your head around a chop or a sop or a top or whatever, but and it's not necessarily for everybody, like if you just want to like VJ and you want to have like dope clips and jam on a MIDI controller, like that's sick too. You don't like the real-time aspect is not a necessity, but at the same time, I definitely agree that it shapes the way that you think about logic in creating and using signals that your computer can either generate or receive or understand to create expressive art or to functionality or, what have you. And so, at the beginning, if I didn't know anything about Cinema 4D and someone introduced me to TouchDesigner, would I have picked it up? Maybe. I didn't have any exposure to any of that anyway, so, but it kind of found me in the right moment of my life that I, had some experience and exposure to the 3D art, and it was more challenging, but it was more fun because it's like, it's like some people enjoy Sudoku, I enjoy like, and a lot of programmers like, like making a network or like making something do something. Like it's
some
just
people like Sudoku,
fun...
some people like TouchDesigner.
It's as simple as that. Yeah, exactly. And I just love TouchDesigner. I thought it was like really fucking cool, and just the more that I learned it, like the more I understood the like insane amount of like power that you have to like in that environment. It's really like allowing yourself to harness any signal that your computer can understand or any data that you can capture in any kind of way and like create, amazing things or swizzle that data into like all sorts of different, numbers to sounds, like sounds to colors. And, it's just really amazing how fluid it is to, use a computer and like to use real life motors or real life lights, lasers, things like that. It's like an everything Swiss Army knife tool of, generative media and just systems design. And I just felt really drawn to it. And I'm really glad that I stuck with it because I love TouchDesigner. It's been a huge part of my life for the last, 5 or 6 years. So shouts out Jacob New for
for sure.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that like, it's so funny because like, I first was introduced to it. I've said this story many times. I'm not going to go into it fully, but I was first introduced to it. And it was like right when I was trying to get into generative art. And then like very quickly I was like, wait a second, what I really want to do is 3D graphics in real time. And then I found Notch. And it was like right at the point where I was like getting really deep into TouchDesigner that I kind of put it down for a second and then got really deep into Notch. And then, like 5 years ago, I was like, and my point of saying this is like, even though I put it down, I kind of always used it for something, because it's like a Swiss Army knife, you know? And then, you know, five years ago, I was like, okay, I'm kind of bored with Notch, and like, you know, I want to do something else, and got really much more immersed into Unreal. But still, TouchDesigner was kind of like always there of like, well, do I need a, you know, data, or do I need to like, you know, have an interface or something? And then, you know, eventually it was like, oh, TouchDesigner is like a systems operation. It's like an environment for anything to do with media and data. And then it was like, okay, well, it's not just a Swiss Army knife for me now. It's like my hub. Like, it doesn't matter what tool I'm using, my hub is going to be TouchDesigner. And very often, more often than not, it's also like the output, not only the hub. But it's just like interesting that like, even though so many other tools were like more, quote unquote, more interesting to me of like what I wanted to do, like with the output, graphics or 3D stuff and whatever, TouchDesigner was always kind of there of like, do you need help with this? Do you need to do this? Or, you know, so again, it's like kind of why I always feel like it's such a good place to start, because it gets the gears moving. And no shade to Notch, even though I throw shade all the time. You know, like if you learn node-based systems through Notch, or even through Unreal Blueprints, you know, maybe Unreal Blueprints a little bit less, but actually Unreal Blueprints as well, because when you learn blueprinting and when you learn node-based systems through these other softwares, they have modules that are already created, especially in Notch and definitely in Unreal as well. Unreal is just different because there's like thousands of different operations. So it's like you're kind of learning a little bit here and there. But the modules are created. So you might learn a technique in Notch, you might learn a technique in Unreal, but you're not really learning the technique. You're learning how to do the technique in that software. When you learn a technique in TouchDesigner, you're literally learning how the technique works. Is that valuable later on? I think for sure. You know, because then you're just going to have a better understanding of things. Does it make it a higher learning curve? Yes. Does it make it more complicated? Does it make it more frustrating? Yes. But the payoff is that when you go to another system, and Notch and Unreal are just one of many, many, many node-based systems. When you go to another system, you're getting, you have like a step up already, you know? It's kind of like, I don't know if this is a great analogy, and we're both probably not, you know, we're both probably not equipped to say if it is, but like, it's like, you know, Python versus like other languages, whereas like Python is super clunky, very specific syntax. If you make a mistake, it doesn't work. And like other languages are way more forgiving and way more like open almost. And like, but if you know Python, if you know how to like follow that syntax and follow those operations, then when you go to like C++ or whatever, you kind of have a little bit of a more broader or more kind of like general idea. And I'm sure some developers are like, you idiot, that's a terrible example, but it's good for me. So yeah, I mean, like, you know, it's great that you kind of got into TouchDesigner and you stuck with it because it paid off hugely for you. And now you're kind of like getting into the, you know, development aspect of TouchDesigner, where it's not just a tool to make beautiful art, it's also an environment to develop, you know, media servers and softwares and programs and interfaces. You know, what kind of was your catalyst for developing AAVJ? Please tell us about AAVJ, and please tell us a little bit of the challenges of creating AAVJ.
Sure. So, you know, when I first started getting curious about TouchDesigner, I started making networks here and there and stuff. And, you know, I think that a challenge that every TouchDesigner developer, you know, kind of eventually gets to is like, okay, how do I actually effectively play this back in a performance that's, you know, optimized and like controllable and, you know, like whatever. And, you know, so I like many developers, I just kind of, you know, watched Matthew Reagan's videos. Shouts out to the GOAT. Matthew Reagan's videos on just like interfaces and just like programming, you know,
the
all
best
that
tutorial
stuff.
voice in tutorials.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so many great developers. Just watching their videos and understanding containers and kind of how to, build interfaces in that way. And so like, AAVJ, or what has become AAVJ, was, just a big rectangle with two more rectangles that had my scenes in them, and a crossfader, and like that was like this monumental thing for me, that I could run a show with TouchDesigner and do it real time. And that was like a really fun project. And I'd use like Resolume a bunch, like when I was kind of using more video clips and stuff like that. And just also shouts out to Resolume for the incredible software that they built and like created the standard of the industry, in a lot of ways, in combination with TouchDesigner and VVVV and like some other softwares. But yeah, so it was just kind of a necessity for me. I just like needed a vehicle to play back the stuff that I was creating, and eventually just started to become a little bit more complex. Like I wanted, more functionality and the ability to control stuff. And so I discovered, some of the other interfaces that the community had built, for instance, Simple Mixer, Richard Burns' really awesome, mixing interface that was like huge for me also, just starting out. And I know a bunch of other people as well, like just a lot of great work put in there. And just kind of expanding on the ability to play back this stuff. And obviously Resolume was a very intuitive software to use as a VJ, as just like it just made sense the way that it is like laid out and how it functions and stuff. And so I think it just things gravitated in being able to work with TouchDesigner in tandem with other like standard softwares, and just like making them compatible, because I feel like a lot of the time people make interfaces, and you have to spend a bunch of time to really like debug like how it works and how you use it and things like that. And I didn't want to make something where you had to like completely like reinvent the wheel of like how how it works, and so it just kind of like developed into a more complex tool, the ability for so I guess that's a good point to just talk about what AAVJ is.
Yes.
AAVJ is a real-time visual mixing tool created entirely in TouchDesigner, with cascading levels of containers that hold your content or allow you to, sliders and buttons, and it's a VJ mixing tool for TouchDesigner users that allows for real-time outputs and customizability. And it's something that I've spent the last pretty much since I learned TouchDesigner, like 5 years just like developing at home, because I wanted to use it, and eventually, I wanted to share it. I wanted people to also be able to leverage TouchDesigner in a way that wasn't like so complex and so difficult, and have to like optimize everything. Like I just kind of found interest in kind of just building all of that and just like optimizing it one time into this tool that people could use to play back their stuff. And it's grown a lot. I think I've had like 8 different versions of it. It's like it's evolved a lot over the last number of years. And I'm excited. I released a beta a couple like a year or two ago, and we've got a big Discord of folks that I fucking appreciate. Everyone in that group, it's just like a really amazing to see how many people have interest in this thing that I built, and I'm excited for continuing to evolve it and develop and release it to the public hopefully pretty soon.
Hell yeah. AAVJ is awesome. I remember you first shared it with me maybe like 3 or 4 years ago now, like a super early version of it. Super early version of it, and it was like I was so blown away by just the UI. I remember the first thing I said to you was like, "How did you get it to look so nice?" Because like TouchDesigner is notorious like for like now it's better, but like definitely back then, like building a GUI inside of TouchDesigner always looked ugly because it's just the way that the tools are built. Very functional, but very ugly. And you managed to make it look so pretty, and then now it looks even nicer. just to say one more thing about AAVJ, it's not only a mixing tool and a really good tool for people that want to do real-time mixing and VJing, it's also super optimized for those things. So, a big thing that one of the first things you'll run into when you start, when you go from just making cool art in TouchDesigner to wanting to make a show in TouchDesigner is optimization. And this is true for any real-time graphics. Optimization is probably 70% of what we do most of the time, even if you're not even thinking about it, 100, yeah. Not even if you're not doing it on purpose, the system that you're using is doing optimization the whole time. So it's very important. And one of the biggest challenges is being able to switch between two things and then have the thing that you just switched from go away. Because if you switch between A and B and A is still running, you don't need A to run anymore. There's no reason for it to run anymore. So having a way to kill A when you go to B is something that, all of us figure out our own ways of doing it. And then, with varying degrees of success, varying degrees of, performance benefits. So, like you said, the tool that Richard Burns made, and even just like the simple switcher palette tool that comes with TouchDesigner, kind of like enforce that of like, even the switch top is made to do that. But, it doesn't work to the degree that you've managed to make in AAVJ of super behind the scenes, super on the back end. As the user, I don't have to really worry about it very much. And I think when it comes to useful tools for visual artists, the more or the less you need to deal with things, the better the tool is. Because, we like to develop things. We like to tinker. And like I was saying before, like I've discovered for myself, and I think that you as well, is like the enjoyment of this whole thing is about solving problems, is about making things, is creating things, not necessarily art. But there are many, many, many artists that don't care about that stuff, and for them, it's all about like what the thing looks like. It's all about like the expression of the art. And providing tools for those people that don't have to deal with all the tinkering and all that stuff is super valuable. So I commend your work for AAVJ, and it's really an awesome tool. Everybody should check it out. I think it's you can find the information on Jack's site, which we'll link here, and check it out. And I think that this is a great time to jump into AAVJ and get a little bit more acquainted with it. And let me just make sure that you're set up here. Yeah, and let's let you take it away, let you take it away, and I'll probably ask a lot of questions and be really annoying about everything, but I will try and let you take it away as much as possible.
Sure. Yeah. Let me know any questions you got. Yeah.
And also, it's important that I mention that after this portion, we will have another interview portion. So stick around. Okay.
All right. So, AAVJ is it works with layers, slots, which contain scenes. You can put effects on the different. It's really just a way to organize all of your content and be able to play them in like a dynamic way. So you've got, all of the content that you've built here, you can drag and drop them right in here. A lot of the core functionality is the same from the beta, but there are a lot of new things in this new version, which I'm really excited to share with the world. But, at a high level, you've got your layers. So basically horizontally are, essentially layers in a sandwich, and they can blend together using, traditional, blend modes, like anything like you'd see in Photoshop or Illustrator or After Effects or whatever. And so you can kind of create, blended mixes of the different content that you want to put on screen. So you've got kind of the opacity for each of these layers over here on the side. Over here, one of the big things about this new version is the mobility for a lot of stuff. In the previous version, things were very rigid and static, and in this version, you can really quickly move things around to create really dynamic compositions. You can even, move the order of layers really quickly and effectively, and you can access all of your assets down here, both scenes, effects, movies. So AAVJ now supports every video type that TouchDesigner supports.
That's huge. That's huge.
Yeah, it's been, I think in the beta it was kind of a half-baked functionality, and I think you'd end up with a banana as the thumbnail, the classic TouchDesigner banana. But that's all fixed, and yeah, it's great to be able to play back movies. For those who are curious about real time, but also just kind of looking for maybe you just want to dive into some of the generative effects, but not necessarily content or whatever. You can leverage that. But yeah, so AAVJ, I think one of the biggest things about optimizing your networks in TouchDesigner, VRAM management. Basically, the amount of texture info that your computer holds on to because it either needs it or thinks it needs it, and that can be a really difficult thing to kind of to manage on the fly. And so, one of the biggest features that I wanted to implement into AAVJ is something that managed that VRAM on the fly automatically. And so, basically, when assets are not being used, they're converted into this collapsed state. That's kind of the VRAM cleanup script, I guess, is what it is. It kind of collapses things and uncollapses them kind of dynamically, and allows you to fit a lot more into your project. It allows your computer to process things better. It runs at 60 right now. It is, I think, chugging because I'm streaming and got some stuff going on. But yeah, we've got our layers here. You can MIDI map. You can create dynamic mixes. You can one of the new features in this version is custom components as well. So you can create your own networks and components that have data inside of them or generate data that then you can use for all of your content or your effects. Like, say you have audio analysis coming on. This is a component that I made in collaboration with Breck Wood, also known as Truffula Trees. Truffula, good homie of mine, has been really helpful in both development and feedback, and just wanted to shout him out there for all his help in that regard. But you can really easily create components that you can wrangle your data. It's not just a playback system. You can pop your component out and attach parameters to some of your different content and whatnot. And yeah, it's just a VJ tool that didn't want to. I wanted it to be intuitive for users, for people to just pick up and effective and optimize in the best way I could. And, at a high level, that's kind of where we're at here. This is a composition that I made for a recent show that I did with Sorta Vague at the Fox in Boulder. Really fun show. Got to do the poster and work with Shakedown Productions to do a really awesome show. So shout out Sam also for just being so professional and great to work with, and also for Shakedown just providing curating a really awesome event, and it was a great time. But yeah, nice. So this is kind of typically how a composition for me is laid out. I like to kind of space things out and have the ability to shift if I want to in the moment, or just feel a little bit of breathing room. And I'll start with kind of some of my heavier scenes, like down here towards the bottom, like on these bottom two layers. Those are kind of like the foundational visuals that I use, and then I'll usually have like a layer that serves as a mask, so you can kind of create dynamic shapes or cutouts with generative media, and then some kind of like bits and bobs, some of these little stuff to see, I guess. But yeah, it's everybody's compositions are different. I've You've got a lot of features like MIDI mapping. You can really easily turn on like link mode, as we've called it, and you can dynamically see if everything doesn't break here. So you can make new mappings. You can kind of everything that's highlighted is stuff that you can link to a MIDI controller and just kind of control on the fly. And more and more, I want to make it as dynamic as possible to be able to use hardware with it. And that's kind of a high level. I think maybe, is there anywhere that you think would be good to chat more about, or have any questions?
Lots, many.
Yeah.
So first of all, the masking thing, is that like, are you just using a blending mode, or is that like a new feature where you can kind of like in Resolume where you can have like an actual like a masking layer, or you just have a layer that you can make, that you just make it a multiply or something, or a screen?
Yeah, I just set this layer to multiply, and then I'll just like create like generative like visuals that I can then bring up and create dynamic masks. Whether this is I try to keep them black and white. It's just like
Love
kind of a straightforward approach. But I mean, you can really do anything with these layers. You can you can swap them around, like I was saying, and so it's really up to you how you want to structure your project. And
the customization is so nice, and like it's not many people realize how important that is, and how difficult it is to achieve. Like, so many times you'll make tools, but you're making the tools for yourself, and that's very good. There's a lot of useful in that, to make a tool for yourself, but it's hard for other people to use it, and B, it might not be as expansive because you're doing it very specific, and then you get a show and you need something else and whatever. So, developing a tool that's so customizable like this is so valuable. I think I would love to see a little bit more of like the way that you arrange things. You were saying that you kind of like made this one for a specific show. Do you stagger it out in this checkerboard fashion for any specific reason, or is it just more of just so you can see things a little bit easier?
Yeah, it's definitely like visual, just to be able to access things, and be able to also have the ability to say like launch a column worth of content that you can call on you can arrange them to something that you'd like for, say, a particular song or a moment or whatever, and you can just being able to construct those scenes ahead of time sometimes, rather than always on the fly. But yeah, just mostly just to spread things out, to be able to kind of navigate the project and be able to move around effectively. Is just kind of something I found myself doing.
Nice. And I mean, maybe we could talk a little bit about the effects and how they work. I know there's like another layer of, you have your scenes or clips, whatever you want to call them, loops. I mean, they're not loops or clips, but let's just call them that. But your scenes, sure. And then you can also, on top of that, add post-process effects to the whole composition or the whole thing. I mean, maybe we could talk a little bit about how that works and, show it off a little bit.
Yeah, totally. So, with this new version, I completely revamped the effects panel. It was a little bit limiting in the previous versions. And so now, I can go over here and drag effects. I have all of my layers in my composition, and a composition layer for, master effects and stuff like that. And I can, just drag and drop effects, place them where I want them to. And so now I've got this like float that comes up here, and any parameters that I have on that effect will just show up in this parameters menu here. And so you'll see as I go through these, you can, lots of different parameters that you can access.
So the way that float is to turn it on and off. It's like a opacity almost.
Yep. This is the opacity for the particular effect. Gotcha. You've also got, bypass, and you can kind of get rid of the effect if you want to. And
then the parameters of each effect pop up in the parameters page. That's great. That's really nice.
And so, basically any sort of signal that your AAVJ project is intaking, some of the other features that we have, are spout and NDI outputs for sending your output to wherever you want over your network or to the same computer. We've also got OSC inputs and outputs for receiving OSC values to say map some faders or column queues. If you had kind of more time coded type show, you could launch queues and launch columns here. And then, we've got this settings menu here where we can change, the resolution of our canvas, just having some dynamic ability in how you structure it, however many layers that you want, however many slots. It's kind of like I wanted to make it a way where I'm not limiting the amount of layers and slots that you could have, and just really keeping that dynamic ability there. And, probably the most important and coolest feature is being able to change the color of the interface.
Nice.
Yeah,
that is important.
So big things happening. But yeah, basically, you can see your outputs here. You can select which one you want to send your output to, and you can enable or disable, really quickly. I think
what
as it evolves.
Yeah, sorry, as it evolves, please.
I'm just saying, if how it will evolve, I think, into maybe a more complex output system,
Yes.
And so definitely in the works. But yeah, what were you saying?
And I was going to ask, if I wanted to, because I do mostly projection mapping stuff. If I wanted to output it to, Stoner or Cam Schnapper, would I have to? Is there a way to use a custom output essentially instead of it going to a window? Is there a way to force it into something else before it goes into a window?
Yeah. So you could definitely use spout. You could spout your composition over to Cam Schnapper or Resolume or
system,
whatever. Yeah, exactly. So either NDI or spout, and eventually probably more hardware outputs, things like that. But yeah, just wanted to create an environment where you could wrangle everything and mix them and just be able to leverage all of the amazing tools that are out there these days, like for VJs and just for visual artists in general. So striving to make it as compatible with all sorts of different software and tools that we have available.
Nice. I mean, this new version looks great. I love the way that you did the effects. I think that's really smart. It also makes it a little bit more straightforward. Yeah. I mean, do you want to go into a little bit of how I can add I keep on calling them clips and loops, but how I can add a scene, and how I can add effects to AAVJ. Show us a little bit the where we're at in terms of that.
Yeah, totally. So one of the other features of AAVJ, I wanted to keep the ability to be able to edit things and kind of construct into the interface itself. And so AAVJ has a navigation feature where I can, right click on any of my scenes and I can pop out a floating window and kind of, immediately just visit that network and kind of make any changes that I want here. This scene was created with Ray TK, which is a really incredible. Yeah, shouts out Tommy on this amazing tool that he built. It allows you to leverage GLSL shaders and SDFs in a kind of node-based fashion, which makes sense for TouchDesigner developers, and it's just easier to wrap your head around than coding GLSL for most people.
Our Ray TK episode with Tommy, episode number
shouts out
something, I think 8 maybe, but check it out.
Hell yeah. Yeah, so just being able to come in here, really creating an AAVJ compatible scene is pretty straightforward. And let's pop over to another TouchDesigner network and just make a really quick one. And hopefully, we can take a look at that.
You know what's something that could be cool? I don't know how simple or not simple it is, but you know how in Resolume you have the preview button where you can preview a clip. Maybe there's a way to when you want to preview something in AAVJ, it opens up a down-resed or like like a lower FPS version of it, so you could just see. Like I guess the thumbnails kind of like give you that ability, but like,
Sure.
you know what I mean? Like, because now it's like if you want to select it, you have to kind of like go into it. I guess opening up the network kind of gives that basically.
Mm-hmm. In order to avoid like cooking something when you don't like need it, so we actually do one of the more exciting features before we get into making a scene. I've also been able to figure out how to do scalable UI too, so you can really kind of like customize your workflow and how you want to look at things. We've also got a preview monitor down here.
Oh, there is a preview monitor.
Yeah. So I can look at each of these layers, and I can even. I think I actually have these
That's
mini
new,
maps
right?
here. Yeah, this is a new feature in the new build.
Fuck, dude, that's awesome.
So it's really
feature done.
Yeah, it's it's getting there. It's nice to be able to have. I think that was like a big challenge sometime in like the older versions is like kind of having to fly blind until you really bring it in, and so just trying to think about that and how I can improve that system.
Super
so
cool.
Just having previews for all your layers was a really helpful addition. It's been really helpful with the workflow. But yeah, so these are all MIDI mappable, and that's really helpful. And yeah, I know that people love to use all sorts of different size screens and things like that, and just being able to customize this, I think, has also been really helpful, and makes things a little less rigid when you're working with it. It works with Windows and everything too, so that's awesome. Fun. So let's actually just use that here.
Super useful.
And make a new scene. So basically, the only prerequisite for making an AAVJ compatible scene is having an out top at the end of your chain named out1 for the most part. So let's just get some simple noise. Get this at our resolution 1080. And we'll attach it to our out. That is great. Let's get this moving a little bit. Some abs time.
Oh, you're a divider, huh? You're a divider, not a timeser. I get it.
Some
people are timesers, some people are dividers.
Exactly. Yeah, and then the only other thing is a fit top named thumb. And I usually bring this down to 256 by 256 to save on VRAM. I'll set this to fit outside and lock it. And so now this is our network. So I can just bring this here, collapse it, and we can see we've got this network playing in here. Say I wanted to control the speed of this noise from this parameters menu here. I could right click here. Let's say float, so speed, add that here. And then so now I come into my scene here. I'll grab a parameter chop and we'll see our speed parameters right here. I'll throw a speed chop down and a null, of course. And then I will attach this here to that Z instead of that script. And so now as we, mess with our speed parameter here, we've got a really simple, amazing, beautiful, generative noise going on here.
Nice.
And so, yeah, I can, maybe I stop there. Is there any, you
can also,
questions?
No, this is great. This is great. Just one other thing to show people, if you open up the customization, the parameters, the customized parameters, you can actually drag and drop any parameter into here and it will kind of create it and bind it. So if you go...
I just recently learned that.
Yeah, it's super useful. Yeah, if you want to have control over the period or really any parameter, you could just drag and drop it and it will give you the option to how do you want to connect it. So just like a nice easy thing, and it names it the right way and everything. So it just creates a nice thing.
Yeah, that's a huge feature I did not know about. 4 or 5 years using TouchDesigner. So this is really great. And binds and references, understanding those is always fun.
Super important. Yeah. And one more thing I will mention,
Mhm.
there's a nice tool by Function Store called, I think it's called Op Tools. I'm actually just going to check, but it's a really nice, Op Tools. You can find it on Function Store's GitHub, but essentially it just kind of makes adding parameters and like customizing parameters even easier. So highly recommended. Dan Molnar, the developer of it, is really great. So I really recommend that one. Do you know that one, by the way?
Yeah, I've definitely taken
I'm
a
sure
look
you do,
at it,
yeah,
and I'm very familiar with Function Store, Dan's work. It's like really amazing. All
Amazing
the
stuff.
like very creative like plugins and everything that he develops. So
Yeah.
shouts.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we have our
Mhm.
amazing generative scene.
Yeah, so we've got our amazing generative scene. I can save this. I've got a messy desktop. So let's go in here. Toxins, assets, scenes. Let's just say amazing noise. And hopefully this is the right folder that we're looking at.
So the
And
assets
maybe it's-
folder, is it? Can you go to different folders, or do you need to put it all in one folder? Is it interchangeable in that way?
So I'm trying to, I'd like to shift the file structure into something, you don't technically you can go and visit any folder and figure out where you want to draw all your scenes from or effects, all of that. I try to keep them in the project folder because, one of the amazing things about TouchDesigner is that the assets that you use tend to be kilobytes, megabytes in size,
Yes.
so
Yes.
actually at this show I learned that backups are very, very important and very real, and it really kind of saved my ass, honestly. So it was I love the idea of being able to have one USB drive or one storage drive or one folder with all your stuff in it. So I try to stay organized in that way, but you can choose from any folder.
Nice.
And then from there it's as simple as should be as just dropping it in, and there we go. It's right in our project.
Nice.
Yeah, so just some improvements on how you populate, how you control them, and whatnot, and very similar fashion to an effect. We can maybe just jump into just making a very simple effect in the same way. I'm just gonna start with the base this time. Go into here, and we will set an in top and an out top. Same thing, just named out one. And then currently we put a select into the second port here. So basically what that's going to do is if I'm not receiving, if nothing's plugged in right here, I'm going to default to this operator right here instead. And then in the top parameter, we just type ... /in one. So basically that looks up one level and finds the correct kind of pipeline operator that allows the effects to work. It's not going to do anything right now because it's not in AAVJ, but we can kind of like
test it
out here. Yeah, so let's say effect scene, and say we want to control the hue saturation and like hue shift. Let's use that technique. So I'm just going to go in here, let's put down an HSV adjust, and then we can really quickly drag that hue offset here and drag the saturation multiplier here. Cool, simple enough. Now we've got our custom parameters here. I think I'm typically like to do the binds the other way, but you get the gist here. It's just an effect that's just kind of packaged up here into this tox, and we should just be able to, that's essentially how these effects are made here. So I've got a bunch of different ones in the project. I'll just take a hue sat, say I wanted it to be on the first layer. I'll drag and drop it here. It'll populate, and then we can right click and see our parameters here.
I love that.
Yeah. So, really simple. I wanted to keep it as simple as possible, just to be able to, to create assets, for people to share assets. That's like another big, you know, point of why I want to release this to everybody is, I want people to be able to share their work and, sell their work, or, create a Gumroad with their Tox files in the same way that
Yeah.
people, create visual clips and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And, it's tough because there's not necessarily a standard for TouchDesigner as far as like how
Not
you
at all.
structure it. Yeah. And like, this kind of system is something that I borrowed from Richard Burns. It's just very simple, elegant approach. I'm not sure how luminosity works and how you structure those things, but also another really great tool, very in-depth tool.
Not
so shouts
supported
out to
though,
the dev team.
unfortunately. I don't think.
Not
Right? Is it still
supported?
supported? I don't think. Is it?
Maybe not. I honestly never got too into it because it was a little more complex than I
Yeah.
maybe like needed it to be.
Wasn't Eric
but
involved in that
very
at
impressive.
some point?
I don't.
Or no,
I
he had
don't
another
think
one. He had
luminosity-
another one.
Yeah, he developed a software called Crescent Sun, and
Crescent
the,
Sun.
a number of other really great softwares with TouchDesigner. But that was like a very advanced LED pixel mapper for screens and ArtNet inputs. Really amazing software and software developer Eric Mincer. Shouts
Everything
out.
he does.
Also another great episode, and
Yes,
good
thank you.
good homie of mine, and
Thank you.
I fucking he's a man.
I love
So
Eric.
shouts out to Eric. But yeah, it's a very kind of simple approach. The components are very similar as well. It's just kind of a container, and you can build your own kind of UI inside of that, and you can drag and drop it in here. I've got some little dialogues if I wanted to delete it and stuff. I'll keep those for now. And also similar to how you can navigate to different networks in the project. So this one is in a collapse state, so you'll see all of the tops are bypassed. That's I hope to achieve 100% top VRAM like cleanup with the new like dot unload function that they released with the top. So something I'm looking into there, but
Sorry. So
you can pop them.
two things there. One is the components. Do they have to have anything specific in them, or just literally just like the actual container has to have like viewing the right piece, or is there anything else that needs to be?
It's basically like a component. Technically, like I could just have just a chop in here
Anything,
and say,
yeah.
well, yeah, it can be an LFO. Let's print out. But the power of these components is that I don't
Out one.
think I'm doing this right. Yeah, right
Oh,
here,
you're good.
right?
I think in look.
You can look.
Or maybe because that's for a top. That's for a top. No, you're right. You were right.
This is supposed to
You're
be
right.
a dot/alpha. Oh, maybe not. Anyway, so you
Well,
can
drag and
in this. Yeah, so the power with these components is in global ops shortcuts. And if you're a TouchDesigner developer and you've not discovered what they are or how they work, I highly suggest checking out the documentation and figuring that out, because it will make your life so much easier.
Yeah.
And it's really amazing what you can do. Basically, global ops shortcuts allow you to say, let's say my comp, very interesting name for this component. But basically, anywhere that lives in your entire network, you can reference the data inside there. So let's do this. I'll say we're looking for LFO1. So let's just say we want to select it. I'm going to say op.mycomp.op LFO1. And so anywhere that this is in the project, I can fucking move this over here.
It will still reference it.
It's still referencing it. So you can basically wrangle all your data, whether it's audio in or whatever kind of ArtNet or, whatever data that you want. All of these scenes could then reference that one component and be able to grab the data that they need. And, you can create really dynamic control systems
Interesting.
that way.
Interesting. I love that. And then one more thing. Okay, so that's really cool. So not a lot of quote unquote requirements for the components, but a lot of nice usage for them. You were showing before when you are opening up a network by right clicking that the tops are bypassed. Is that automatic? Are you just like saying, hey, scene, bypass any of the tops in here? Is that like a way to optimize, or is that by like if you open up any of these scenes, their networks, are they all going to be bypassed?
Yeah, so anything that's not being actively used, they're going to be in a collapsed state. So essentially what the VRAM cleanup script does is that it'll go into the network and find all of the tops that are using the use input. So basically like whatever you plug into it, that's what the resolution is. It basically switches that from use input to eighth. And so basically every time that a scene is collapsed, you're collapsing all of the relevant tops down to an eighth of their size, and it will purge the unused like VRAM.
And you're bypassing them, so they're not cooking.
And you bypass them and then you cook them once. This is an old technique that I found on the forums. I think cool. Matthew Reagan pioneered some of that and just leveraged it. And this, like I said, I think it will evolve into using some of the new features in TouchDesigner, but unload. But that's essentially how it works. It's not a perfect system. It's still, like any other kind of nodes that you have in your network. So you have a bunch of bypass nodes in your network. It might, unbypass them without you wanting them to. So still working on the best way to.
Right. When you turn it on, it will unbypass it.
Right.
Interesting.
So yeah, but it does a solid job of managing the VRAM and kind of dumping things like the first time that you kind of access these scenes, typically, especially with a little bit more heavy scenes like shaders and things like that, sometimes you get a hiccup on your CPU. It's because it's like creating all of the nodes and loading all the textures that you need. It's definitely something that I think with what I've done and what I think a lot of people do is just like go through one by one and just click everything. I also have a warm-up feature that just will do that automatically, but
nice.
We're shifting to a state that at the beginning of the project, it'll just load right up and everything will be pre-cooked. So
automatically, that's cool. And when you preview the node, when you preview the layer, I guess it doesn't do that for you because it's just previewing the actual layer, not the actual shader or clip or loop.
Right.
Okay, so interesting. So you have to kind of like load them, quote unquote, cook them. But then once you do that once, when I go from node to node, like when I open up a different layer, it's smooth, right? There's no hiccup there. Oh, I like that scene.
Yeah. Once you've done it once, you should be good to go. It shouldn't have any sort of like hiccup or whatever going between them.
Ooh, I like that scene too. Okay, and another question would be, does the bypassing happen for the chops as well, or just tops?
Just tops, just because the the VRAM to manage all of that. I think like another big thing is, some people may know this, some people don't. TouchDesigner is primarily focused on a single core process. There's a lot of multi-threaded ability these days, which is really awesome. But being in the name of optimization, it's very much still important to understand how your computer is processing things, how you're managing your resources, and so things like components where you can do the math and crunch the processes that you need to once and reference it by a bunch of different things rather than having those processes in a bunch of different scenes. Having to manage that and stuff is
smart.
Just ways that you think about how to be able to manage all of this real-time processing in one project on one core.
Totally. Maybe another. I'm just coming up with ideas now, but maybe another thing that you could do is leverage Touch Engine, where Touch Engine is essentially running it like on another processor, on another instance.
Here.
So it's running it on another thread. Maybe like when you add a component, that component is automatically made into a Touch Engine component and loaded in as another multi-threaded thing. Or I mean, I guess just in general, like make your components in a Touch Engine thread. It could be a good optimization thing.
So excited about the potential about Touch Engine and Engine Comp, and I've tried to use it. Yeah, I've tried to use it a number of times, maybe not as in depth as I probably could. But a lot of potential there. It's a little tough because it's kind of like closed, you know?
Very closed, yeah.
Yeah, and so there are a lot of use cases for using that, and maybe it's something that I explore with AAVJ, particularly around maybe like MIDI management or like chop management.
Yeah. I mean, like it's like one of those optimization things of like the actual thing itself is not taking a lot of processing, but like when you exponentially have 100 things, or when you exponential grow, then it becomes a really nice optimization. Like 0.01 milliseconds is not a lot, but 0.1 milliseconds times 100 processes is already a millisecond, so then it becomes like a really nice thing to optimize. It's funny how we're talking about milliseconds as if that's like, but that shit is important.
Yeah, it is. Any frame that you can, not lose is like so important.
Yeah,
and
it is.
Sometimes it's as simple as putting one node in front of the other. It can significantly.
I learned a new one. Who showed it to me? I think it was Dan actually. Where if you can use nulls in a way to stop things from cooking. Because some processes will cook backwards and cook forwards, and like sometimes that's important, but sometimes you don't want it to cook forward. You only need it to cook backwards, and sometimes the nulls you can force a null to not cook forward unless it's being changed. Like if you drop a null chop, or any null, I think it does it, but a null chop, you see the cook type is automatic, so you can actually change the cook type to be. I can't see what it says, but you can have like selective, and then it basically will only cook one direction if it's not being if it's not going to the rest of your network. It's like a huge thing that just like changed much things for me.
Really great tip. It's it can be finicky. It's definitely something to be used. You kind of have to understand sparingly, like when to use it. When you have a value that's kind of changing on say like an integer basis, and it's doing that, and so you basically just have one cook that needs to be managed. That's a great use case for selective. So you're not cooking anything. Lag chops are a big culprit. They kind of cook every frame. Yeah. So when we're on automatic here, this will cook. But when
the thing with that is, sorry to cut you off, but the thing with that is if that null is going into anything else, it's going to cook everything continuation. So like it's not even about like the actual null cooking. It's that whatever it's connected to is now going to be cooking, even if it doesn't need to be. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So it's
switching this to selective is great because now we see it stop cooking. Everything else down the line is not going to be fetching this thing. The only thing you have to be wary about is if you have values that are kind of like changing a lot, like say you have a constantly changing value. You wouldn't want to use selective here. It can actually hurt your performance. At least to my understanding, it's just it kind of makes the chops like think more because it's like they're checking every time to see if they want to like every frame essentially it's now checking if it wants to send the value or not. So for something like this, I might use automatic. But it's little things like that.
It was very specific for like UI elements, where like the UI element, I was developing something for Magic Box, like the UI element, like didn't like, it was like a UI element that was reading a huge table, and like the DAT was constantly updating, but that UI element didn't need to constantly update. So it was like if the moment I just put like a null there, it's like when the null wasn't there, the chop was going into like, because the chop is going into like 50 different instances, and because the DAT is always changing, and there was a DAT to chop, it was doing that the whole time, but it didn't need to. And the moment we added a null, we saved like so much cooking. It was like, I was like, what the fuck? Like you can do that? It was so nice. Because like in like my brain was like, oh, if I put like a switch there and then have a switch and it automatically turns, and it was like so convoluted to like save performance, and it was just like that one little thing. I love like learning those like little tiny things that just like change your whole workflow.
Yeah, no, it's really just those little things that just save you so much processing. It just it's great, some of the nuances, and that's why, like we were talking about earlier. I mean, there's so much great resources on YouTube these days, especially for TouchDesigner. Electronaut Billiam, great channel.
Oh yeah,
like
such a good
Panic.
channel.
Supermarket Salad,
Torrin
Blankenship, like
Smith.
Smith. Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, I mean, there's some that it said. Yeah, that's shouts out Torrin. Yeah, no, lots of really amazing content on the internet these days for learning TouchDesigner and kind of picking up on some of the little techniques along the way is always.
Which one did you say?
Fun.
Salad?
Supermarket Salad. Yeah,
I don't know that one.
I'm not sure their real name, but I enjoy that channel. Also, another goat, Pocket of 12.
Oh yeah,
shouts
Paqueta.
Yeah. So
all day.
So awesome. Understand,
Supermarket Salad. I don't know this one. This looks great.
Yeah, lots of great stuff on there.
There's also Nodu the Talking Ball. It's really good.
Yes, for sure. And all of the immersive interactive HQ
really good
creators on there. It's just really, really awesome. Shouts out to all you guys.
I found a new channel. If we're already going to shout out channels, let's see if I can find it. This is going to be a great podcast moment where I try to remember the channel that I found. Let's see if I can find it in my history. Fuck me, where was it? Because I have another YouTube channel. 1 second, let me just go switch this. Akamoto Visualizer. What a terrible name for a channel. Akamirafu Visualizer. Akamirafu UV. He just started a new channel. Really great stuff. Lots of RayTK. Lots of like components that he released. I really like it. OKAMIRUFUV. So yeah, go look for that one. It was a good one. I just love it. There's like so many channels. Like every day, like a new channel pops up, and it's like. And then they're growing, like they got 10,000, this guy's got like 3,500 subscribers. He's new. And it's just great. It's so good that the market of tutorials is so vast. It's like people want that. It's a great sign. It's a great sign. I really like that.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, there's so many channels out there, and for those like that I'm forgetting, like it's amazing what you guys all do for the community and like help so many people learn. Sure. So like really, thank you. And
muchas gracias.
Good shit.
Okay, Jack, I think I would love to, if you're up for it, could we jump into one of your scenes? Maybe I could pick one and just see how you built it, and just like get the download of how Jack's brain works when he creates scenes. Maybe you pick one. It's probably better if you pick one.
Sure. So I can just maybe dive into this one right here and just kind of take a look at it. I over the last like couple of years, I've really been fascinated by like fluid type systems and how to build those in TouchDesigner. 2D fluids are really amazing and can be really, really expressive and rich. And but I just love the idea of like 3D fluids. And before RayTK, that wasn't as like possible as it was. You could displace vertices on a rectangle or whatever, and that has a lot of cost implications and whatnot. But so a technique that I use for a lot of my scenes here, we can take a look in here, is creating textures. I think this is just noise that I am feeding, and essentially I'm creating an SDF with a single it's just a single plane SDF, and then I'm using that texture to displace that plane using fields, which is a really cool feature of the RayTK system that Tommy developed. And that's kind of like a baseline to a lot of stuff. So basically, I've got the noise field and the texture. So I'm combining those and translating that to a vector. So then I'm taking the plane SDF and translating, which in shader world, translating is kind of displacing or like offsetting. So it's taking that image and it's offsetting that that plane, and then I've just created, you know, material with some of the diffuse and specular contributions here, and then we get this plane that's being displaced or translated, creating this like wavy look into the shiny texture here that we got with the modular mat. And then another really cool technique that you should check out, Tommy's channel, is on the, let's see, step output.
Yeah.
So basically you can visualize the step count into an image. Obviously this is just kind of not that useful, but if you use a reorder, switch it all to green, you get this nice edge based on the distance of the edges of your SDF. And then you can kind of shift that up a little bit, and then I'll color it. I have the new bloom top, also friggin' amazing. Shouts out to Derivative for adding this. This is huge.
Yeah, huge.
And then I'll just composite that back onto the original. So it can be a pretty significant effect too. Which is cool.
Interesting.
But yeah, just a nice like glow effect.
This is Papa Bear, shout out Jesse, also did something similar where he's with the render selecting the depth and also using that as a post-process effect. That's the beauty of RayTK, is not only is it a super amazing tool for being able to do GLSL, it also just gives you so much data. And again, like any tool that's going to give you data, you can manipulate that data and make it better. So like having the different G buffers. I guess it's not a G buffer because it's a shader, but it's kind of akin to a G buffer where you have the render passes. Having access to the different render passes allows you to do a lot of cool stuff, as we just saw. So really nice. Really
exactly.
Nice thing.
Yeah. Just kind of combining these different, aspects of the image. The depth. And speaking of depth, depth is amazing. And when you can get away with it, like actual real like depth distance data, really awesome. And when you can't, I've been using this technique for a while where I'm just creating almost like a tilt shift effect. And instead of using depth data, I just use a Luma blur. So you can just basically get a ramp and create just like a fake blur. So if I can maybe just make it more significant.
That's
okay. So so you can get this really nice tilt shift effect with a very low cost.
I love that.
By just
That's
kind
so
of like
nice,
using.
Dude.
Yeah, and
really
it kind of just elevates. Yeah, thank you.
Focuses.
Kind of elevates the image. Yeah, you can kind of even like play with it too as like an expressive type thing, like going in and out of focus. So it's a little technique that I can't remember where I picked up, but yeah, and then like that kind of being the technique I use, similar stuff with, different fluids. So I can, I've got this like kind of chrome fluid, just, if we want to pop in here, just chilling, just churning, just coming in here, very kind of just like simple edge feedback network.
Just the simple edge feedback network, 30 nodes in. Yeah, just a simple.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe the threshold it's hard to tell these days, but same technique. Just applying that feedback over a displaced plane. It's really great because I can now I can move lights around. I can change the color of the lights, like actual real space lights.
Yeah.
Which is really fun to mess with. And, another,
so do you find, sorry to cut you off because you're on a roll.
Yeah.
I want to hear more, but do you find like just doing your techniques and rendering with RayTK, like gives you a lot more, like speed and flexibility, or do you find it like, cause like, okay, taking like the actual crux of this, right, is in that noise, the feedback network that you were just about to show. But like the way that you're rendering it is through GLSL and RayTK, whereas like if you just put that into like a grid and some lights, almost for sure wouldn't get the same performance. But visually, might be similar. You know what I mean? But are you finding like working with RayTK in this fashion of just like putting a texture on a plane is beneficial to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, the only way to get really smooth like surfaces like you can with an SDF shader is by having a ton of vertices on your rectangle or your grid or whatever. And that becomes really costly. And then even then, like you can still kind of see little ridges and things from time to time. Whereas with the SDFs, I mean, it's really, I think this is probably 16-bit or 32-bit. Obviously, 32-bit, you're going to get the cleanest result. You may have more VRAM or whatever. But yeah, with SDFs, you can get some really nice, like, smooth surfaces, and it doesn't cost like a ton. It's like, there's a bit of cautious rendering it and the shadows, speculators, stuff like that. Yeah. But yeah, it's really hard to even get close to like what you can do with a shader, to get those surfaces. So I really love to use RayTK in that way. And, you can do so much with, I mean, this also allows you to, move your camera around. I think my middle mouse is broken, but, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, another big thing with feedback systems is they often tend to be pretty fast generating. You've got stuff moving really, really quickly. So this is a technique that Theron Prey, who's on the Datagrama team, also one of the lead developers of Synesthesia. Yeah, shouts out.
His episode's coming out soon too.
Oh, sick. Hell yeah. Yeah, he showed me this little technique a long time ago at some point, where basically inside the feedback loop you can cache 2 frames and then use a cache select with a cross top that's set to like 0.6 or 0.4 depending. And so each of these basically incrementally slows down the feedback system. So if I bypass these, I can put a null right here. If I bypass these, you'll see that it'll speed up a ton, and get kind of crazy. So there's some cost, and like it's mostly like a delay because it's kind of like caching a frame or whatever. But you can get these really nice fluid, feedback system. And slow them down
each
that
one
way.
of those is just doing the same thing, and each one is slowing it down in a little bit. Can you control the speed that it's doing it?
To some degree, you can kind of tell that there's a difference when you like move it. And if you were to do all of these at the same time, you probably could slow it down even more. So
that's
varying
crazy.
degrees of it. Yeah, and it really helps with some of the feedback systems because they can be really kind of hard to wrangle sometimes.
It's super hard to control the speed of a feedback system. It's a very difficult thing to control. It's almost like a cache top at the end, but then it's like that's
that's
super
another
cool
really handy
technique.
One.
I love
Shouts
that.
out Darren. And I use that a good bit in a lot of my scenes. Yeah, for sure.
Oh wow, I'm definitely gonna use that.
Yeah, check it out. RayTK also amazing. Let's see. See what other kind of stuff we got in here. I like to have a mix of like 3D stuff and 2D stuff, and just being able to be expressive with some of the little overlays and kind of like gritty stuff that you can add in. And that's like a big thing that I wanted with AAVJ is to like be able to have many layers of content that you could use at one time. And I think for a long time, obviously the computers in the last 10 years have gotten so much more powerful and have allowed this to even be possible. So some of the older systems were kind of based on the A and B deck because it you couldn't really do a ton more than that at the time. But as the hardware gets faster and more powerful, it's really cool to be able to have a bunch of different layers and be able to expressively go between them.
Totally. Super nice. Yeah, I mean if you want to show one more, like one of your cool masks or overlay stuff, that could be really nice. A little bit of a send off to us. And thank you so much for showing all your techniques. I mean, this is so great.
For sure. Great. I am a product of all that I have absorbed and have learned from so many other people who have planted those seeds also. And, I think that the more that we share those techniques, I think it allows everybody to grow and for things to evolve and amazing things to happen. So I'm
No doubt.
happy to share.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, maybe just like one more here. Let's see. This is, I think, another
Nice.
example of some of that
Follows your
fluid
mouse.
stuff.
I love it.
Yeah. So you can create some cool masks with that. Similar vibe, just kind of, I think this is like a physical fluid. I can't remember. It was either Bruno and Breezy or I hate to shouts out whoever made this fluid system, which is basically powering the back end. I have to figure that out and credit them in the comments or something. But yeah, got some like weird stuff here. Using a lot of those techniques.
Ooh, I love that
edge
reaction. That's like a really nice reaction diffusion.
and goosebumps vibes.
Yeah, super nice.
And then yeah, just let's see. A lot of SDF stuff. Some more just more 2D type stuff, fun to mess with. And this is just basically creating a little grid pattern. I was just kind of winging it or whatever. And then I'm generating random noise, which is why this looks so crazy. And then I'm using a hold chop to just kind of, what do you call it? Sample and hold. And then using that for the X and Y with just a little feedback to kind of keep them around a little bit. I think I got a bloom top here somewhere. And, just kind of little textural elements that you can add, on a different layer that just give a little bit, more texture to your composition or whatever. It's kind of fun to mess with.
I love the simplicity of this. It's super nice.
Thank you.
So how are you doing that whole thing? Sorry, that was super cool. It's like a...
Yeah. So I'll just go here and maybe I'll just bring it down here. I'll, what's it called? I will just get a noise chop and just set it to the smallest that this period will go, just completely random here. And then, you could math it however you want, and then you get a hold chop. And then, so let's just get a keyboard in. Let's say 5. So every time I press 5, I'm going to get a new value that's, super random. Sometimes I'll even try to randomize this even more. You can do the same thing by going to a noise period all the way down. Sometimes I'll sort this again by random. I don't know that it does, I don't know how much it really does, but just one more level of randomness, and then I'll do a resample, and you get a similar effect. You just get like really randomized values that you can plug in here and sample and hold and get some really cool randomized values to use for your X and Y for different things.
Interesting.
So that can be really handy. Yeah, really getting in the weeds here. I appreciate everybody who's still hanging in with us here, getting into some technical and maybe a little spaced out demo here. But, I'm excited for other people to, check this out and experiment with it. And, let's see what everybody makes. It's really exciting for me.
Well, thank you so much for taking us into the weeds and the nitty gritty of AAVJ. It's such a great software. I really highly recommend it. Not only for people that are, VJing and TouchDesigner, just to see what a beautiful and thought out UI and system looks like and feels like. And I think it's open beta, right? You just need to join the Discord. Is that correct?
Yep. Yeah, you just need to join the Discord. We can link that down below. Anybody can join. If you're curious about it, the currently the beta is up to download and check out. So it's a little bit older, but very soon, hopefully in the next month or so, if I can manage it.
Very
I
busy
would
man
love
over
to
here.
release it as soon as possible. Trust me, everybody. I am working so hard on getting this to y'all, so I appreciate everyone's patience. But yeah, very soon we'll have this new version. I think you guys will like it, and
Hell yeah.
find some great improvements from the last version.
Hell yeah. Okay, cool. Well, I'd love to shift into a little bit more of like some esoteric conversation, about different aspects and concepts.
Sure.
Before that, there was a few things that I wanted to ask you before that I didn't get to ask you, specifically about Pretty Lights, and kind of the show that you do there. I know it's like a massive collaboration. There's a lot of people working on the show, but I think that you have a very big role there, and it would be really interesting to hear your perspective on kind of like, the concept behind it, the conceptualization behind it, how do you guys sync all the different elements of lights and lasers and, point clouds and normal VJ stuff and content? There's so many things going on. And then obviously all like the audio reactive data that's coming in and, just like run us through kind of like a normal day in the Pretty Lights front of house.
Normal day at Pretty Lights front of house. Yes. So we've got a network of servers in a video rack that I operate on right next to Eric Mincer, who's my number one, and tech everything, just my number one helper and collaborator, and it's really great to have him there, and we shoot the shit and talk about TouchDesigner, and good homie of mine. But so we've got a pretty complex network of cameras. At any given time we kind of have over 12, anywhere from 12 to 20 cameras. I don't know exactly the exact amount of cameras on stage and in front of house and stuff like that, and then we basically got a server running TouchDesigner for, AAVJ or some of our other tools that we've developed for audio analysis and shaping audio into cool ways to work with the lighting rig. I also use Resolume as kind of the main aggregator and output for the screen outputs. It's just really great and stable and easy to use, and just a great tool for aggregating everything. And then so all of this come together. We use a combination of NDI and SDI via 40 by 40 matrices, constellation switchers, and just a pretty complex network of video feeds bouncing around everywhere. And so we're kind of all connected. I mean, the idea of the swirl bridge and just everything is just how connected the show is, and how kind of that reflects how connected the band is, and everybody who's a part of the experience, both the production and the crowd. And so Derek is a good friend of mine at this point. I love that dude so much, and he's very hands-on. He loves to be a part of the tech, and has been a lead driving force in all of this. He's super interested in TouchDesigner, also a great developer, and it's really cool to work closely with him, and we're just discussing what cool ideas that we can think of, and then just using the tools available to make those. It's like a really amazing thing about TouchDesigner.
Totally. Nice to have it's so nice to have a obviously it's not a client, it's your friend, but it's so nice to have somebody who you work with or work for that is interested in what you're doing, and not just do that. It's so right. It makes the process more collaborative, makes the process more of a creation, an entity almost, instead of just a function, or instead of just a system. I think that's really nice. And yeah, I mean the results speak for themselves. The Pretty Lights shows, the results just look absolutely fantastic. In our conversation with Eric, we did get a little bit into some of the technology behind it, not all of it, because I think some of it's proprietary and you guys want to keep that to yourselves, which is totally legit. But it was just very fascinating to hear kind of so many things involved to make this one thing, and it's how do I say this? But sometimes when you have a lot of things happening and there's a lot of information, a lot of data, sometimes the result can be overwhelming or maybe messy, you know, like personally, like from in my art, I love noise and I love asymmetry, and I love, you know, like my favorite effect is everything flying all over the place and then coming back together and then flying all over the place. Like I love that, but it doesn't always bode well, especially when you have lots of different things happening. And you know, luckily for me, I work in psytrance, so like that makes sense for that kind of music a lot of the time. But when you have more maybe slower music or more, you know, compose. I mean, psytrance is composed as well. It's not fair to psytrance. Structured, you know, or maybe just like, yeah, just different genre.
Yeah, for sure.
Doesn't always bode well. So it's really cool to see the all these different elements and all these different multidisciplinary kind of art forms kind of come together into one as one coherent thing. And that's a really big testament to, you know, you and Eric and everybody else involved in the show. So congratulations on that. And again, urge everybody to check it out. I think we're going to link Jack's website, and on the website there's a page that has all your upcoming shows. So can check out where and when. Is that right? I think so. I think you're
we've got all our shows coming up there. And just, you know, on that topic, I just, you know, I would be remiss not to mention the absolute legend, Gregory Ellis, aka the Laser Shark, who is such a driving force and just like fucking hilarious and great to work with. And, you know, is the glue, you know, the lighting rig is just so important, and it gives a lot of forgiveness to, you know, being able to reset, and we kind of, you know, go off each other. If he needs a moment, I need a moment. But we've just got like really great team at front of house. You know, shouts out Starkey on the audio, front of house audio, and Andrew Quigley on you know, kind of Greg's secondhand man, and you know, just having a really great team of people who get along and like understand the nuances of things and how they connect. You know, it's been a huge beneficial thing for me, and I've learned like so much. And so just wanted to make a shout to all of them, and appreciate them a lot.
Hell yeah. Yeah, and again, I keep on saying it, but it really is paving the way for other people. I can, just a small anecdote for myself, I'm trying very hard to, well, it's happening now, but there's an artist, I'm not going to mention it just in case it doesn't happen, but an artist in the music industry that I'm trying to make a show for as well. I've been hounding him for like the past 3 years, and finally, you know, and he's a lovely guy. It's been very difficult. He's very busy, but finally we managed to like get a face-to-face, and like I got it to pitch him kind of my concept. And the whole time, anytime I interacted with him, it was like, you've seen the Pretty Light show, you know what it is, like, let's do something like that where you get all the data and it's so interactive and there's so much immersion. It's not just visuals. It's not just, you know, loops, or it's not just a VJ. It's like, it's so much more than that. You're making a living, breathing entity, like a fifth band member. I don't know how many band members, but whatever. Another band member. The visuals are another band member. Yes, there's a VJ controlling it, but it's actually just all operated by data. All the input from the audio, from the MIDI of the band is kind of, you know, mixing it. All the input from the cameras and the point clouds is all making it. But yes, there's somebody kind of like, you know, steering the ship, but it's like kind of built into that. And you know, there's many other things I could reference, but that is such a potent one to reference and kind of like relevant one. So, you know, thank you for doing that again and making it so great, and not just like a, you know, not just like a fad thing of like, oh, we're doing real-time stuff. You know, it's an actual, real, awesome thing. So yeah, shout outs to that for sure.
Thank you. Yeah, it takes a village, you know. It's like to get everybody connected and for everybody to understand how things are flowing. You know, it's like, it really, I feel like I end up being that kind of like channel at front of house, but it's so connected to everyone, and everyone's so much a part of it, you know, like bi-directionally, you know. And it's really fun. I mean, the idea of like like you said, kind of creating this entity, this ship, this breathing thing. The idea of like persistency is like something that I've just thought that's always been like just really cool. Of like, the show doesn't necessarily always have to be the new, like this track is this track is this track is this. Like you've already seen that once, like there can be this kind of like fluid nature of the jam,
should be
in the same way. And yeah,
especially like with that kind of music, right? Because it's a jam, right? Like there's so many live aspects to it. There's no track, there's no time code, there's no, I don't know how the intricacies of the music works, but it's very clear to me that it's a jam, and so that bodes so importantly to being able to jam with it as well as the visual stuff, and not just be like, yeah, this track do this and this track do that. So yeah, I think that's really awesome. So I don't know, this is kind of a weird left field question, but I just remember on your Instagram at some point you started kind of like releasing information about like NFTs and blockchain technology. And I just found that really cool because it's like, you have a big platform and people listen to you and respect you. And I think that, I'm sure you agree with me, that NFTs and blockchain is super misunderstood and unfortunately kind of labeled as, scam or not viable. And it's a shame because, especially the blockchain technology. I mean, it's literally the best technology that was invented in the past 20 years. Maybe, it's so good for so many industries. And, and I don't think it's not like that it's gone anywhere. It's still being used and it's adopted by a lot of things. Unfortunately, the economic industrial complex kind of took hold of it and is kind of stopping it from becoming a further thing. But I think that blockchain technology has so many use cases outside of just cryptocurrency. And then, NFTs is the same thing. Like a non-fungible token in a concept is so powerful, especially talking about what we were talking about before with AI. Imagine an AI system that used the non-fungible token technology as like a way to aggregate and understand what it's using in its compilation. Like if I did a prompt and then every piece of that, every piece of that model had a token, and then when I do a prompt, like any token that's called, it knew what token it's calling and then automatically sent a cent or whatever, point of a cent to the artist that it's referencing. That could be implemented tomorrow. Whatever, why it's not being implemented, another conversation. But the technology itself is very powerful. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of get your take on, NFTs and blockchain and, it was a wild ride. I made a little bit of money, definitely nowhere close to most people, but my favorite project that I did during that time was Shipibo pattern stuff that I released on Hickton Nuck, whoever the fuck you pronounce that, Hickton and I made like $500, but I donated all the money to the people of the Shipibo tribe, and it was just so easy to do. It was so easy, like make a piece of art, put it on the thing, people saw it, people donated, and it was like that's it. And it's like the exchange of like people getting something and me being able to pass that around was just like so simplified. So yeah, I mean, like, what's your 2 cents on that for sure?
My hot take.
10 cents.
Yeah.
Your 10 cents.
Yeah, my 10 cents. NFTs. I think that the wave of NFTs when it came along was such a huge, wild ride of so many factors, like the art side of it was one thing, the economy, the gambling, all of these different elements were such a part of this huge, media frenzy around like NFTs. And, I do believe, in the utility of NFTs and blockchain technology, exactly how those are implemented in real life situations, I feel like is a complex subject to kind of think about, but it doesn't have to be so complex. I think, a barcode on a loaf of bread is the most normal thing that you can fucking think of. And that's like essentially what NFTs are kind of like doing. They're giving you the ability to track a particular item in perpetuity, in a large sense, and be able to, create contracts around that, where every time it's passed on, the original artist gets a percentage of that. And, there's a lot of amazing things that can come of that. And I think like in the beginning, using large amounts of energy to mine Ethereum and mine Bitcoin. And, I think that people kind of equated everything to how Bitcoin worked with proof of work and everything. And, Ethereum, I believe, used proof of work before they switched over the last couple of years to proof of stake. I don't know. Maybe I'm
proof of stake.
butchering here, but I think that, again, I think there's a lot to be said. I think it's a very nuanced topic in that sense. A lot of those kind of downsides have gone away. A lot of people don't care about NFTs anymore, but there is a big thriving network of people who are still using them, and I think that those will be kind of unsung heroes of where NFTs and blockchain, how that fits into real life, and outside of the make money quick scheme, which unfortunately that was a part of it. I think that and it was a very loud part of it, which I think turned a lot of people off.
Totally.
All that said, I don't have anything against NFTs. I think that it is incredible that it allowed digital artists to be able to commodify their work and make, not only some money, but handsomely, a lot of money for their work, and before NFTs, it's you try to commodify a digital piece of work, and you'd have struggled if someone pay you $100 for their album artwork. And, now that you have NFTs, I mean, people are paying thousands, tens of thousands of dollars, for, $1 million for whatever. So I don't know, as somebody who's a digital artist, where digital art didn't really mean shit, to most collectors, or there was just no effective way to, it's oh, I'm never going to print this out again. Or an image can just be screenshotted and shared a million times, it's how am I ever going to buy a digital piece of art? It's it allowed for that to happen. And I think that's a pretty amazing thing. And it shifted the entire industry as a whole, in a similar way that, AI art is doing that. And now you've got, AI art and NFTs, both, going at it, and everybody's all upset and whatnot. But, like I said, there's room for everything. I think NFTs are a very interesting and has a lot of potential. That being said, I made a few NFTs on Hic et Nunc. I guess at the time I didn't feel like paying $50,000 for one of my renders felt right, and it felt like Hic et Nunc was a platform that was using proof of stake already, and so there was just very, very little amounts of energy that would be needed to make those, and
Tezos.
More affordable. Yeah, Tezos. Shouts out. I haven't looked at my crypto wallet in a long time, but
it's depressing.
But it was a fun ride. I didn't make any fucking money from crypto, but I'm really, really excited and proud for my friends who did. I think that's awesome, and kudos to y'all for capitalizing on in that crazy time period.
Especially the people that actually do it from the heart. Beeple is a good example. He made millions and millions of dollars. Prior to that, he didn't make any. He made money. He was an artist, but he considering the amount that he contributed to our scene and our world of digital art, he was not rich by any stretch of the imagination. Or even if he wasn't doing. It wasn't directed to his massive amounts of art. So. He's a really good story of somebody who deserves that, I think another person who, we know personally, Steven Glasscrane, he made a lot of money from it, but it's he makes amazing work, and he deserved that. you know,
And
like,
human.
it's not like he manipulated the market to make money. He like was like,
Right.
here's my artwork. People are willing to pay a lot of money for it. That's like, you know, why not dive into that? Why not, you know, jump on that train? There's no reason not to, and you deserve that, you know? So it's like, I'm very happy for those type of people that made money. And, you know, I mean, I got burnt by so many projects. I'm sure you did too, where it was just like a rug pull of like so many broken promises, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. And like, you know, I feel like yeah, in particular, like Steven, like, you know, Steven has been such a proponent of enabling artists, you know, so
Yeah.
many artists, even myself, you know, like
Totally.
we connected like years ago on Facebook and just kind of have stayed in contact, and now have worked together, you know, for Pretty Lights gigs and otherwise. And Steven is just like a wonderful human and a
person.
great artist. And it's, you know, and yeah, it's just amazing to have friends that are, you know, that we're able to just expressively share what they do and make something for it. I think, like, you know, good karma in a lot of ways. And also, yeah, just kind of experiencing. And so yeah, shouts out all the homies.
Speaking of homies and collaborating, you know, we have so many mutual people, you know, Eric for sure, Steven, of course. And I mean, we'll be here all day if we name all of them, but it's less about the actual people themselves, but more about like the concept of, you know, collaborating with friends and homies. I feel like, you know, maybe you can share a little bit about like what that means to you, like being able to work with people that you actually enjoy working with them, and you know, like just the collaborative feeling of this world and this you know, this culture of you know, and we could tie it in as well to AAVJ being released for free. You know, the idea that it's a free tool and not a paid for tool, you're going to now create a community. You're going to now create options for collaboration. So, you know, is there an ethos behind it for you, or is it just kind of like you just enjoy working with people that are cool? You know, maybe give us a little bit of that as well.
Yeah, you know, AAVJ started as a, you know, a basically just open project that I want people to mess around with. You know, I've put a large amount of my life into building that, you know, and I want the ability for AAVJ to grow and to be sustainable and to, you know, and develop and new features and things like that, you know. And like, I think that I'm exploring ways where those things can happen while also providing a worthwhile value for VJs, whether that is a, you know, a free model or a very affordable, you know, license model. You know, at the end of the day, I want it to be accessible and easy for people to access and use, and feel like they're getting, you know, a lot of value out of the tool that they're using. So I think that, I guess I'm drifting a little bit from the question.
No, please, it's all good.
Can you remind me one more time what your question was?
Like the collaborative nature of the industry that we are in, and kind of being able to work with friends and not just, you know, colleagues. You know, if that's a product of who the people that are interested in this industry, or is it just kind of like, you know, the nature of the game, because it's like, you know, we're not on stage as a, you know, we're not like a celebrity, you know. So, I mean, now it's becoming more and more like VJs being celebrities, but it's like very different than like a DJ who is face and persona is more, you know, put on a pedestal. Whereas like the famous VJs, nobody knows what Taz looks like. You know what I mean? You know, it's like, you know, or in, you know, in America, it's like Android Jones is like, well, he's maybe a little bit different, but I think you get what I'm trying to say. Like, it's like a lot more, like we get the opportunity to work and collaborate with people that we like, instead of like, I'm going to work with this guy because he's famous. You know what I mean? So like, yeah, how does that hit you? Like, you know, what is the feeling of that for you? And, you know, does it tie into releasing AAVJ for free in that sense?
Yeah, I think collaboration is different for everyone. I think like you gravitate towards people who have maybe the same ethos about how they create, or like use the same tools or the same techniques or styles or like whatever. And so, it's collaboration is so important also because you learn and you grow and you get influence from other people. And I think it's a really important thing, like starting out, and it's tough to collaborate starting out too, because you're still trying to figure out how to use the software or like how to even do anything. But like, even if it's like sharing your clips for someone else to VJ with your stuff, or like, sharing a network or a technique that allows another person to make a derivative, network. I mean, it's like it helps, what is it, raises all ships, by doing that. So
Totally.
it's important. I think collaboration, like I said, like wanting to create a tool that's an open environment where people can expand upon it, people can work and share and, commodify their own work and things like that is something that's really important to me too. So, I think this next version of AAVJ, trying to figure out what the best way of releasing that is. I want to make this tool accessible and everything. I also, I want to be able to feel good about investing my time into keeping this project going. I really think it's really there's so much potential still to be discovered. So and sometimes that's collaborating with other friends and developers, contracting people, so just trying to figure out the best way of doing that. The beta obviously is free and you can go check that out on the Discord. It would be awesome to have a free version of the new AAVJ. Still figuring that out. There may be tiers of what that looks like going forward. So TBD, but more of that is coming together. Figuring out what that release plan looks like and when that looks like, and but yeah, I hope that people will, however that works out, like I hope that people will find the value that I want to instill in that project, and hopefully grow into even more tools, even more possibility.
Yeah.
It's really exciting for me.
That's awesome, Jack. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'd love to. I can't wait to see what's going to happen with AAVJ, and I think that having tiers is a great idea. You are. We've said it before. There's a lot of mixing tools available, but there aren't any really that are being supported and being worked on actively. So you taking up the reins for that is extremely commendable. And if you deserve to get reimbursed is a weird word, but like it's totally legit for you to be profiting from that in some way. Maybe now the profiting is by collaborating and having this community, but money is also great. So I think that you're smart to create a tiered based system. Hopefully there'll always be a free version. I think that's you understand the power of that. So
Okay.
I'm not really worried too much about that. But yeah, I mean, dude, I would
sure.
pay so much money for your audio reactive tools. Like, not even a joke. I know I've hounded you for them a few times, and you've been nice enough to be like, here's an old version. But I would pay a lot of money for the new versions for sure.
Yeah. Well, I would love to make those things like available online. And like I said, that component was, like Breckwood was such a part of that too. I think it's, kind of fashioned out of some of the TouchDesigner audio analysis too. And we kind of worked together on the interface a little bit. But yeah, like thinking about how even those tools expand and how there are options and, derivative things, like just creating like a market, I think just centered around this tool where people can make their own stuff is something that
Super
I'm
cool.
striving for. And yeah, it's a big goal of mine.
Hell yeah, dude. Well, thank you so much for your time. It's been a great conversation. You're such a nice dude, and really, it's been
Likewise,
really
man.
nice to talk to you and see a little bit insight into you and how you operate. Is there anything you want to share with us or plug before we end this?
Yeah, I just wanted to shout you out for just
Thanks.
having this awesome podcast and highlighting all of these, incredible artists that are doing so much for the community and being such a part of our collective experience with the thing that we love is music and just, generative or just media in general. And you're bringing light to so many people who are, behind the scenes for that. So I just wanted to shout you out and say thank you for that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you man.
What an episode. All my jagged lines seem super smooth with 32 AA, and getting to learn and understand Jack on a higher level was super inspiring and informative. Thank you so much, Jack, for being on. Thank you, Manismash, for the intro and outro music. Join us next week. We have an amazing guest on. He comes all the way from Berlin, yeah. It's a great episode. See you next week.